Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Transforming Company Culture Through Leadership, Why a Culture at Audit Matters for 2026, presented by Head of Leadership Growth at Educate 360, Dr. J. Pugh. My name is Mariela Salinas, and I will be assisting and moderating today's session. We are on Zoom for today's webinar, and we will be emailing you a copy of this recording after the session. We do encourage participation throughout the session, so please use the chat or the Q&A option for our short and dedicated Q&A after the presentation. Educate 360 is so excited to present this webinar today, so without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Dr. J.
Thank you, Mariella. It's just great to be here and great to have everybody with us. And I want to welcome you all for joining. As Mariella mentioned, my name is Dr. Jay Pugh. I'm our head of leadership and development for Educate 360. A big topic we're going to focus on today is the importance of a culture audit and why it is important to do one, especially in in 2025. It's been a year. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. And why would it be important to have a culture audit in these cases? And so, as people are starting to make their way in, I want to ask a very key question that I'd love to get a little bit of a deeper thought on in the chat. So, I'm going to give everybody a moment to type their responses. And here's the question: if you had to describe the way that your organization navigated 2025, how would you describe it? Explain your thoughts. And it doesn't have to be one word answers like thriving or holding steady or surviving, but just from a conceptual standpoint, boy, how did your organization navigate this year? Tell me how you're feeling from 2025. Give everybody a few moments to type in the chat. It's been a tough year, but holding steady. I love this, right? Challenging changes, holding steady, kind of seem like we're navigating in the dark. Lisa, I really love this as a whole because that is a very that's a pretty common approach of what a lot of what we're seeing in the workspace from a lot of the workforce reports we're coming out is that we're not sure of what's coming next. There's a lot of unsure approaches. We don't know where this is coming. There's a lot of unknowns, as Jennifer's mentioning. I like that there's holding steady. We're all holding steady. We're kind of keeping the boat going. I love the sort of the deeps of where we're coming in. There's many, many ups and downs. There's a lot of chaos that's kind of shifting in the where it is. I love that response from Kalina. We started out, as Kathy mentioned, started out surviving, midway held steady. Now we're thriving. Staff changes this year. So there are some shifts in the way we're moving. I like that there's a lot of changes. We're seeing that change fatigue is going to be a real thing. We actually have a webinar, really almost like a fireside chat, where we're going to get into change fatigue and the challenges that tie to that. And so I'm really glad that we're bringing this up. I think intentionally focused on employee experience, Bob. And I love that as a key component. We're going to talk about why that's going to be so important in about probably 1 to 2 minutes. So I'm going to come back to that point that you just mentioned about why it's important to be focused on employee experience and elevating the business. We're surviving in some cases. And I love, this response here to where we're seeing people leaving. And there are some organizations that we're seeing the pain points of people leaving. We're going to talk about the pain of turnover that comes into play and why that's such a challenge. And, a lot of major changes. It impacts staff lives. There's not necessarily, if you may feel a little unsteady or a little less secure, there's, civility. Yeah, I like this. There's a little bit of the shutdown component. There's a little bit of and not necessarily saying it one way or another but the political landscape does shift a little bit of the dynamics of the way the economic workforce goes. And so that's going to present some areas of the way we need to think about how we head into 2026. A little bit of downsizing in some cases, growing but cautious in some others. We're accepting of change. Some people, they're embracing change. Some people, there might be a little bit of resistance of change in some cases. I love these responses that you're all sharing with me. And I really mean this as a genuine thank you, because as we've gathered sort of this research and going through this, there's a lot of consistency that it feels like a lot of holding steady with trying to make a couple pivots here, trying to make some changes without overly rocking the boat. And I'm going to share a couple things. And I promise that the goal behind this is not to scare, it's not to create fear, it's not to do any of this, but I'm going to share some statistics that is worth noting. So hang on to a hat or two as we go through this. The first statistic comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And from an economic standpoint, what we're seeing is that in the last 10 years, we saw an average economic growth of 13%. It is anticipated, due to a few different reasons that we're going to dive into, we're only going to be expecting to see a job growth rate of about 3.1% of jobs. It equates to about 5.2 million jobs over the next 10 years. But we're not expecting to see this high boom of industry growth from a, not necessarily from a profitability standpoint, but from an employee growth perspective. And so there's a link there that if you want to check that out, I highly recommend it. I bring that up because this is going to tell you one thing in just 1 minute. The other thing that's also kind of coming in that kind of ties to and against it is there's newer studies that have just come out from SHRM and Deloitte and Qualtrics that have discussed that the numbers of an entry-level employee, replacing them is still 30 to 50% of their yearly salary. However, a highly skilled tenured employee or a new leader, it's about 150 to 200%. It used to be 125. That number, the cost of turnover for a leader or a very high skilled employee, has now increased due to a shift or a downslope in productivity, a change in the amount of effort to get somebody onboarded and up to speed in the same capacity, and a highly skilled leader, which used to be 200 to 225%, is now near 300% of their yearly salary. They are estimating that to replace a highly skilled leader, it costs almost 3 years of that person's salary to get somebody to the same capacity. The other challenge is that organizations that may not understand the importance of that culture component are losing to people that are. And so the number one reason why people leave is because of their immediate manager, as we know. The number two reason is because of the belief of the vision of the organization. And the number three is because of the acceptance and the understanding and the synergy of the culture that exists. So I give these statistics because we're going to see from a leadership perspective some change in human capital. As that happens, here's some reasons why. Number one is the obvious one, which is AI. AI is part of the change of where not as many jobs are coming into play is because of administrative work that is being moved to more AI components. But what that means is that we need to upskill employees to move into more creative project managerial or business analysis roles to be able to make more informed decisions. Decision making, critical thinking, and emotional intelligence are still areas that AI has not caught up to just yet. And so because of that, those are areas where we need to see the shifts. A second reason is because of the downsizing and lean sort of efficiency of process that is coming into play. That is also occurring. With that, what we have to be very conscientious of is that you do not want to break those highly skilled employees because you went too lean. That is a cataclysmic mistake, is running too lean when it comes to people and your resources. So When we say this and you see these statistics and you see this information in front of you, what's the first thoughts that come to your mind? As you're typing in the chat, what's the first thoughts that come to your mind? I Beth Beth, I love Sorry, Beth. I love that. That one threw me off. Wish our leaders were watching this, right? Take care of your people, importance of talent retention. Yeah, I love that. Exactly. It is. How much will it cost us for us to retain really meaningful talent? And that is the hidden cost of doing business. What people don't tell you is your number one cost and your number one asset at the same time are your people. It's not your expenses, it's not your process, it's not your buildings, it's your people. And what happens is those hidden costs really make a difference in those cases. So this is work culture can be, if undervalued, can actually hemorrhage money in an organization. And engaging and investing in employees is critical. And this is, Kelly, you're absolutely right. This is the opposite of the past. That's why it is such an important thing when the market was saturated. This is really important to where it's going. Well, do you know what? If they want to walk, they can go elsewhere. That dynamic has now changed. It has flipped on its axis. This, Erica, is another key point that you bring up is building programs that staff see as valuable, and not just staff, but there's going to be two other statistics I'm going to share with you in just a moment that's going to be really important. That's going to be actually in our infographic that our marketing team has created. I highly recommend downloading it. It is a huge, huge help. One is 75% of middle managers claim that they are experiencing some layer of burnout. And number two, 52% of Gen Z workers do not want to move into leadership. They are choosing peace over leadership. They do not see the benefit of moving up. And that is going to mean that we are going to find ourselves in a leadership shortage if we do not listen and build. So building programs is going to be a huge component. And there is, Bob, you're right. We need to upskill using AI as the tool, generating and looking out for current team members. Growth and development is key. Cross training is key. We need to focus on building our people up. We need to upgrade, upskill, and build. And this is where, and I love this as a question, Joanne, to where you ask one where it's how do we develop tenured, mature leaders if we're no longer hiring entry level workers who need on the job experience to mature into the roles? And that's where you're right. We need to develop. Development is so critical. And if we don't, we're going to really miss a huge gap in wisdom, transfer knowledge, and that is going to slow down the productivity that is going to be craved in the way that we move. And I'm reading what Reynard mentioned. Multi-capable airman standpoint, especially having members do several jobs. Absolutely. Outside of their current career field, there is. That's why cross-training, Reynard, is really important. But a lot of organizations don't necessarily emphasize the importance of knowing multiple departments in the business. And so military is one of the stronger capacities in those spaces. And Steve, yeah, I agree with you, right? It's one of the things that the younger generation is looking for more peace. So that is huge. So you all are very, very spot on right now as a whole. That what does this mean for retaining talent is more important than ever. It really is. And it's not just about before. The last 10 years was really about hiring talent was really important. Not only Is hiring talent extremely important, but retaining talent is more important than ever. And so this leads organizations, especially human resources. And I'm not sure if there's a hand raiser or a thumbs up down at the bottom. Who are my HR people? If you can put a thumbs up, who are my HR folks? If you can give me a quick thumbs up. Or if there's or just give me a yes in the chat if that's easier to find. There we go. Yep. There we go. Wonderful. Excellent. And it can be H&R, HR, L&D, even L&D folks. Who are my L&D folks as well? Perfect. Perfect. I love this. And the reason why is because this is leaving a lot of us to ask the question to say, you know what? Why are our employees leaving? What can we do to make them stay? What are the biggest organizational challenges that we can overcome? And then there's these other underlying things of, boy, if we are going through restructuring or acquisitions, or we're going through components where there is massive change, how do we do so in the most effective yet least disruptive manner? How do we make sure that our people are not getting shaken to the core? And so here is what a key component of what we propose heading into 2026 is. But before I dive into that, I want you to think of, I'm sure many of us do, or all, nearly most to all organizations, I'm going to say most, do some sort of employee engagement survey that occurs. First question is, what are the key advantages? Quick rapid fire in the chat. What are some key advantages? Key advantages of doing employee engagement surveys. Yeah, temperature checks, finding quicker blind spots. Love those. You get to know where people's heads are at. Yeah, if they feel like they can't approach in person and you really do create a space to where there is anonymity, then yes, there is a little bit more honest feedback. I just changed honest and anonymous together. Anonymous, as they say. No, you do get honest and anonymous feedback. You get actionable items based on the results. You do have to act on them. Wonderful. Here's the other question. What are the hidden disadvantages of only conducting employee engagement surveys? Number one, we have to hope that they put in specific details, number one. Number two, if they don't respond, we don't know. So there could be hidden voices that still we don't capture. There might be situations to where people have been burned in the past, Nina, that I really love what you're saying here is they may say that, you know what, I thought this was anonymous, but I'm on a team of 4 and they're going to sniff out that I was the one that said something. So maybe that was there. Right. The culture of anonymity, right? Yeah, it lose trust if we don't act. If they don't see action that follows, they may feel like, you know what, if they don't see something coming in behind it, they may not see that change is coming. I really like this. And there could be survey burnout, Joanne, right? If we only do surveys, they may just be like, oh my gosh, we're doing another survey. And yes, I love this. So we're shooting for the moon, right? We may do too much. Exactly. Management conduct, there's no action, no remediation. They bring up a problem, there's no solution. Absolutely. Leadership may accept that, you know what, employees are gaslighting. This is great. So we see that engagement surveys, honestly, and I am a massive, massive fan of engagement surveys. I believe it is one way to conduct good information to understand the culture of an organization. Are there other ways that you can think of that you conduct key and you gather key data in your culture? Focus groups, exit interviews. I love this. Very, very good. Focus groups, exit interviews. Data points, turnover, site visits. I love the idea of stay interviews, Bob. Stay interviews are great. Skip level meetings, open door policies, life cycle surveys, morning huddles for those quick touch points. I like the random one-on-one interviews, percentage of staff taking professional development, Joanne. That is a big one. Excellent. Engaging in work groups, one-on-one updates. I love that leaders taking this on are taking the effort to say, I want to get a pulse check from my own team without just going through an engagement survey, which is phenomenal. We need to, that's great leadership first and foremost. What I want to introduce to you is why there is a little bit of a difference that if you wanted to go a little bit further, and I love that, Bilal, is the casual sessions too. What I'm going to emphasize is this next piece is something to consider that if you wanted to go a little bit deeper, there's something called company culture audits. Yes or no in the chat. Quick yes, quick no. How many of you know about a company culture audit? Perfect. 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 Love it. Love it. I love it. And I love that if you do, great. This is amazing. And so most people, this is the best part, is most people don't necessarily know about a culture audit. There's a couple that do. And so what I want to share is what a company culture audit is, what it does, and sort of where we can go from here. A company culture audit is typically where you can do this internally or you can do a third party to come in. The idea is that person that is responsible for this is truly the person that conducts interviews, surveys, pulse checks. They really try to diagnose the cultural strengths of the organization and the gaps. How they do this is through a pattern of what they call thematic coding. So they will find patterns and themes in qualitative analysis that will go through and find those key themes and patterns that say, here's the behaviors that we're truly seeing in the interview data. So it's not just saying, okay, let's say we did an interview, we did a staff survey of 300 people and they scored a 4. What we do is we may take 20 people and take those 20 people and go deeper and listen for those key themes to go further down and say, hey, you know what? Let's listen a little deeper and find this deeper layer and listen for those deeper themes. And so and I love this, is it better to have a CCA compared to leadership conducting these sessions so that there's no bias? Reynard, yes. In most cases, there are that if they see a third party coming in and they truly know it's anonymous feedback, there is a little bit more openness. And if that third party is a really trusted partner, the third party is not coming in to bash the organization. They're really looking for the strengths and the areas of growth that come into play. And so, Steve, you're absolutely right. They do prefer an external agency to conduct it because they're not there to give them the lip service. They're there to say, look, here's what you're doing that needs to continue, that is effective. Here's the strengths of what you're doing. Here's where you don't want to remove anything. Here's where there are some changes where you do want to make adjustments. Because if not, you might run into further turnover, or you might run into further issues between departmental silos, or you might run into additional problems with X, Y, and Z. So having a third party do this is a huge, huge advantage. There is number one, a complete lack of organizational bias. And it's unconscious bias. Like it's not a bias of like, well, we want us to be like, we know that. So for us, we walk in and we are as unbiased as humanly possible. Number two, with the findings, we truly provide the data that goes through this in a detailed report. We expose the actionable gaps between what the brand is promising versus what the lived experience is of the organization. Then we deliver the blueprint. We deliver an audit report with themes, insights, and action priorities. So the answer is yes, for the most part, Reynard. Not saying that if you wanted to do this internally, by all means do it internally, but sometimes there's a little bit more value with going with an external partner because of those other factors. So, the CCAs versus engagement surveys and the difference. Think of engagement surveys as you're going to get a lot of breadth in the information. You're going to get a lot of breadth, a wide range of information, a lot of information. There's going to be some surface level components coming out of it. Whereas doing a company culture audit, you're going to hone in on more of a smaller sample size to a degree, but it's going to be much more in depth. And so it's going to include deeper insights. And what gets included in these is typically an executive summary. So there's this concise strategic overview that shows what's at stake, what was done, and what we're doing next. The other thing is that it's a qualitative analysis. There's anonymous employee feedback. We do not give names. We do not, it is truly anonymous feedback when we do this. And we really do this not to try to I mean, yes, we're trying to protect the anonymity of the respondent. At the same time, we're trying to uncover things that maybe they may not share out loud, or they may not share an engagement survey because they've been burned in the past. We can do this in focus group style or interview style. But what we use is what's called an inquiry-based questioning technique in our space. There's different techniques that get used, but we use inquiry and metacognitive questioning techniques in our space. And we do that so because of this, we really try to go a little bit deeper into the woodwork to find where that is. And so those questions kind of lead into like detective patterning. It's meant to be diagnostic. The other thing that comes into this is we provide an internal roadmap and action plan. And then we also provide an external roadmap and action plan, because the one thing, and I don't mean to say this in a bad way about our, like even our own business or things like that, but it's, I think one thing we differentiate is we're not a surf and turf mindset. We're not a, here's your culture, good luck with what you do. We want to see that if we can continue to help in the process with trainings, with coaching, with other things to support you as a partner, we want to see if we can do that. Now, if you do want to take that internally, by all means, we support that too. So for us, we try to lay out an internal action plan and an external roadmap as well. Now, really great question from Steve is we conduct attitude biannually. Steve, are you saying you do this every 2 years or twice a year when you say biannually? That's the only thing I don't like about the biannuallys or the bi-monthlies. I just real quick. Okay, every 6 months. How often do CCAs recommend these get conducted? These can get conducted yearly if you're trying to see growth over time. Some people may do it every like 2 years. I don't recommend it as a 2 year thing. I think doing this at the end of a year is always a good time to see where the growth came in year over year. So I always say that this is the time to do it, or at the beginning of a year, and then at the beginning of next year, run through it and see this. So typically every 12 months is a good time to do so and see where that progress comes into play. Yes, agree. Yeah, in-depth effort yearly is more effective. I fully agree with that. But some people go, do you know what? We want to let some work go into play. It may take a little bit longer. Could we do this at 18 months? Sure, that is possible too. So here's what I'm going to show you. And we're going to do a little bit of a walkthrough, a little bit of a demo to see what this looks like. And I have a use case that we're going to walk through. Now, the first thing I'm going to share with you, and Mariella is going to provide this for you, is so Bilal, it can be conducted by the company's HR, but it also can be conducted by a partner, like a third party partner. So, for instance, if you work with Educate 360, we do company audits, we do company culture audits. Like that's a standard for us. So we typically will serve as the partner for you in those cases. Because once again, in some cases, as Steve mentioned, there might be a little bit of maybe internal bias by the company's HR, but we will partner with the company's HR and conduct those with you. So the first thing that Mariella, I love Mariella, she's so wonderful, is she just provided the company culture audit as a link for you that if you want to download and say, look, here's some reasons why you would want to do a company culture audit for some examples. And yes, it can be performed as an internal audit. Yes, it can be. Solo, it can be for sure. The idea is it certainly can, but if you're going to do it, you're going to want to have somebody on staff that really knows how to do the deeper diagnostic with this. There's deeper questioning techniques, there's inquiry based approaches, the compiling of the data. We use a deeper AI transcription tool that gathers themes and patterns and what comes in, and then we verify and validate that information in the findings. So there's a couple additional things. So if you are going to do the internal audit, it's really important to know the deeper details of what goes into it. So where these typically get found is when the following happens. Number one, if you're running into some turnover, a company culture audit is absolutely the way to go. Number two, if you're running into organizational siloing and you're really trying to break down silos, we do what's called silo busting as coaching. It's alignment coaching strategies, which is what we call silo busting. Organizational silo issues, company culture audit's going to be really important. Managerial capability. If you feel like there's a lack in the leadership capabilities that currently exist, doing a leadership audit would be amazing time to do so. If there's cultural gaps, for instance, like if there is a real pain point between leadership and the employees, and there's a really friction there, conducting those are going to be really important. And I love that as a suggestion, Steve, is that it needs to be supplemental. This is not to replace employee attitude surveys or employee engagement surveys. This is not to replace. This is to be supplemental, supporting. This is meant to say, look, you found this in the information. If you want to go further to find good details, that's where you want a company culture audit. I really do appreciate that additional nugget. I think that's really critical. So in the next 10 minutes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through a little bit of an audit, and then we're going to leave a little room for Q&A. Okay? So let's dive in. We're going to do a culture audit, and we're going to pull this up. So we have Acme Leadership, for example. Now, there was a real company that went through this. We're not going to give names. We're not going to do this, but we're going to talk about a report that we went through, and we're going to talk about sort of the approach, what we did, what came out of this. But this is what you would expect that if we did a culture audit, what you would expect to come out of this. And so there's a table of contents, obviously. We're going to go through those pieces. But the first piece of what happened was there was a group, and I'll explain a little bit of the context is we had an engineering firm that was really solid with handling problems. They were very good on the fly, but the challenge was that they felt like things weren't moving from an innovation approach as much as it could be. The HR manager was really trying to find out. They felt like there was some friction. They were trying to see, they couldn't pinpoint what the challenge was, but they had some turnover with leadership. They had some turnover. They had some people stay, but a lot of their leadership left and they had people that joined within the last 2 years. So they're trying to find out like what is going on between the newer perspectives and the older perspectives. So we did a discovery call with a person. We had the kickoff. We walked through it. We set out an initial questionnaire, which was like very much a minor engagement survey to start. It wasn't anything extensive, but it was just questions for them to ponder. Like, we think about things like, why do you like working at company X at Acme? Why do you do this? What's the best part about what you do? What are some challenges that you currently face? If you had a wet magic wand and needed to fix some things, what would it be? Just questions to ponder to walk into. We held interviews and we transcribed them with an AI tool. So when we did that, we found key themes and bullets. And what we do is we take the transcriptions, we dive deeper into the data, we do what's called descriptive and thematic coding, and we find those codings, those themes, and those strategies, and we compile them to find which themes are consistently coming up as patterns. Then we built the PAT report to send to that HR leader to send to the plant leadership team and the senior leadership team, fully anonymous with no names, but here are the themes and findings. It was a truly objective report that was shared with the group. They also requested an additional alignment session with the plant leadership team and the senior leadership team to come together to talk about the findings and talk about next steps on what they would be doing. So we conducted this. We did 13 interviews. We walked through, we broke through, we asked broke down some patterns and themes based on pain points, vision, strategy, and the findings. After this, we went through many interviews, several pages of transcriptions, and what we found was here were some strengths. They were very growth minded. They're not just sitting at a desk. They really like to get things done. They loved being an action-packed company. That was one of the greatest strengths that they did not want to lose or leave behind. That was a key strength. But one problem that came with that was that there were many interviews that it was mentioned that we're spending too much time in the weeds, or we start meetings that are strategic, but then we go right to the tactical. We're constantly putting out fires. There's not enough effort going into innovation. These were constant, recurring themes that came out. And what we gathered from that intel was the SLT provides heavy pressure in running a lean organization. And number two is that the plant leadership team is so focused on putting out the fires that they would prefer to run into the fires rather than building processes to prevent those fires. The other thing that they ran into was they had a director that intervenes and gets a little more heavily involved than maybe they should. And so the director took that feedback so well. I was so proud of this director. And they said, you know what? I think it's time that I need to start putting trust. And that was so powerful to come out of that. So this was a really eye-opening experience. Another thing is that the SLT wasn't buying in. And the reason why was because they really they weren't speaking the senior language mindset was really what this came out to. They take more of an effort on focusing on influencing strategies. Basically, they weren't coming up with hard number data. They would tell a story rather than coming up with hard data to support the information. So they needed more data-driven approaches to get senior leadership buy-in. The third issue was a challenge for the senior leadership team. For the plant leadership, which was the mid-level leadership, they talked about that it was very much wanting everyone to succeed. They talked about their people like they were people, where SLT used the term headcount more. And that caused a rift in the communication in the way that it affected the culture. And so with the SLT, when we had the alignment session, the word headcount was a dead term moving forward. And so these were key findings that were starting to come in to say, look, if we're going to align moving forward, we have to set rules in the alignment. And so that's what we did. We built a 3 strategic priority to focus on for the remainder of their for the next fiscal year that they were running into. We focused on a strategic plan of monthly and quarterly touch bases where SLTs and PLTs come together to have more strategic alignment sessions. There were continuous feedback loops that needed to be done through questionnaires or surveys that were quicker, not engagement surveys, but quicker survey loops. PLTs needed to have more of they needed to build at least one unified automation process per division moving forward. They had to build a data-driven resource allocation plan. So there were many things that they had to build out from an internal recommendation. But this is where us as a partner, I think we shift versus saying, here you go, good luck with that. We hope you do well. What we came in and said, look, we can come in and provide our help too and say, look, this is where we can provide a little bit of additional tailored workshops. We know your business. We know what we did with you. Here's what we can do to help support this with a course called Becoming a Transformational Leader. With Becoming a Transformational Leader, we can build a strategic plan with you in that workshop and give you the time and space to work on that with the concepts we're teaching. You know what? You want to build better innovation and automation strategy? Well, we have a course that focuses on thinking with critical insight. Let's do that, but tailor it to the innovation strategy you're doing. So that's the difference of what we can provide as an additional layer of support. For strategic engagement, mastering meaningful engagement. Building data-driven business cases, they want so that we can focus on better data-driven buy-in, building better business cases. This is where real data meets real culture. So, here is my question for you. In seeing this, what's your first thoughts as you're seeing this? When you see a report like this to take back, what's the first thing that goes through your mind? Oh, I love that, Adriana. Timelines. We can specify that with you. We would specify that with you in advance. So if you're saying, hey, we want to deliver a scope, we would help build this out as a scope with you prior. So there's some that if there's, timelines for action, typically if somebody's like, we want to build this out within the next 6 months of action, then we would build out the recommendations to fit within a 6-month timeline for that report. If you wanted it to be over the next 12 months, which is more of the standard, I would say, if we're looking for what a standard timeline is, it's typically over the next year what the goals are for as we move as an organization. But we can help build that scope in the report. That's a fantastic question. Kelly, this is beneficial at all levels. And that's why it can be helpful if acquisitions are going. It can see things that are for restructuring. It can be for high turnover. There's a lot of different, like silo busting. There's a lot of reasons that come in. And Reynard, you're absolutely right, is that when people share stories about problems, they think they're one-off situations. When you provide real tangible data as it ties to the culture, people have a tendency to listen a little bit more. That is absolutely correct. We certainly can. And what we can also do, Steve, is we can build in a SWOT with this. We can build in a SWOT analysis with that into the report. Typically, the SWOT would be a part of what we wanted to. So where we have our findings, if we wanted to build out it that way and you wanted to see it in that format, we can certainly do that as the findings. Yes, that is definitely possible. And we teach SWOT analyses, so that wouldn't be a hard transition for us at all. These are great questions. I'm loving this. So let me ask you this. For those on the call, we still have a lot of people on this call. What is the most interesting part about when you're seeing these CCAs? I'll give everybody a few moments to type in the chat. So I think there would have to be clearance. I think it would have to be clearances, and if there's an inspection team, we would possibly be able to partner with the inspection team in that case. Once again, for that, Reynard, the goal is that for the inspection team, you we're not here to replace what they're doing. Our goal is to provide, if they're not going deep enough, our goal is to see how we can help you go deeper to find. So it's looking for the deeper depth. That's the main idea. And after learning about this, with CCA, how much of percentage of organizations conduct CCAs? What's really interesting about this, I'll give you some really cool information, Bilal. 80% of organizations do some sort of, whether it's a survey or a culture component, exit interviews, they do something of that sort. Typically, only about 10 to 20% of organizations do a thorough culture audit. And you would be surprised at the impact that it has when they come out. So I hope that helps below. Really great question. So here's my final question. Why do you think now is a better time than ever to possibly have a CCA conducted? From your perspective, why do you think now is a better time than ever to conduct a CCA? I love that. New year, new beginning. Budgets for next year. Well, yeah, that could be a factor too, right? If we're going to do that, let's be strategic with our budgets. Yeah, if you've recently had a management change, rather than assume, let's get facts heading into 2026. That's smart. I like that. Better to understand the people in the process before it's too late, and then we're firing from behind below. Yes. Bobby, what if the desired changes that the organization wants to do is very different from where the rest of the organization sits? Then we have misaligned. And Kelly, you go back to that point that's really important, which is, boy, Bureau of Labor Statistics, if we're trying to really retain talent, what's our current turnover? What's it currently looking like? Is it a little higher than we're hoping? If it is, this might be a time to take a look at why. So, folks, I appreciate you spending this time with me. What we're going to do is we're going to pass this over to Mariella. You've already asked some incredible questions so far. I love these questions. I always love the engagement you all give me when we're here. But we're going to open this up to any final questions, comments, concerns that you have. So, Mariella, take it away.
Absolutely, Jay. Thank you so much for all the fantastic info. I did want to remind our audience that if they needed any additional info on this topic, please do not be afraid to visit us at educate360.com or click on the link that I shared in the chat to learn a little bit more about the culture audit, what to expect, why it matters. And just as an additional reminder, we will be sending this recording to all of you in email after the session. So be on the lookout for that. I believe you got to all of these questions, right, Jay? The ones that were asked earlier. I heard you answer a bunch of the percentage
I
stuff.
feel
So
like I was on them. I felt like, man, I felt like I was there today. But if I didn't, please feel free to put any other questions in the chat. I'll give it another minute or two just to be on the safe side. But I think I answered all of them.
I agree. And I love what Steve said about no assuming here. If you get the facts, you're ready for 2026. It is so important. I know that this last month is final stretch, so I love where our heads are at already in the chat. And if you have any additional questions, please do not be afraid to reach out to us as well. We would love to answer all of your questions.
If not, here's what we'll do. Yep, if that's not the case, just give me a thumbs up or a quick thanks or a quick, leave me alone, Dr. J, and we'll go from there. But other than that, we'll give everybody a moment just to type a quick little message and we'll go from there.
Excellent. Absolutely. Another 30 seconds for all of the last minute feedback. Thank you all so much. Yeah, this was a
Awesome.
lot of great content.
So if you do have any questions, I mean, if you're already working with your account manager, please reach out to them. They are great. If you don't know who to reach out to, or, please make sure, like I said, we'll get you to the right people for sure. Is a backup or anything here. Yep, I'll put that right here just in case. I'll put that in the chat for you too. Just so that you have this. I always like to be a line of support and I can get you to the right people just in case if we do have somebody working with your organization already. I want to make sure we get you to an account manager who is your real one-stop shop. That's the best part is they can support you in any facet, whether it's technology or process or project management, Lean Six Sigma, cybersecurity, AI, leadership, behavioral assessments, all the above. Um, they can help. And thank you, Mariella, for that assist. I appreciate it greatly.
Excellent. Well, I will go ahead and leave our awesome audience with all of these links to check out after the session. And we'll get y'all out of here and you guys can have these 7 minutes back. But we'll absolutely see you all very soon, hopefully in the classroom. But again, reach out whenever. We'll be here to assist. So thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks for the awesome questions. And of course, as always, thank you so much, Dr. J.
Thank you, Mariella, and thank you everybody for joining. Take care and have a wonderful holiday.
Bye, everyone.